Hey there, this is your fantastic Arif, and I welcome you all to an amazing series of my podcast, Ring the Bell, to alarm our present for our future. We all are facing climate change issues. Some acknowledge these issues and some don't. Those who acknowledge these issues try to get the solutions. In this Ring the Bell series, I will bring you stories of those people who are forerunners in discovering the solutions to make this earth healthy for each and every one of us. So let's get started.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we have an eminent personality who is specialized in the concepts of bioeconomy, politics of climate crisis, climate change, as well as on the art of dealing with climate deniers. He has a Ph.D. in chemistry and is an elected fellow of the Royal Canadian Geographical Society. He was an adjunct professor at the University of Northern British Columbia and taught the graduate course Climate Change and Global Warming. Our guest, Gerald Kutney, is the author of the book Carbon Politics and Failure of the Kyoto Protocol, and is also known for having inspired the popular hashtag on Twitter, Climate Brawl. It is an honor for me to have a guest like you, sir. Hope you are doing fine.
Oh, I'm doing very fine, and the honor is mine. I am extremely pleased to be invited to be on your show today.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Kutney, you are already a renowned personality, but it would be a privilege for us if you can enlighten our audience about you and your work.
What I'll do is just give you a background how I got involved in the climate crisis. I had worked in the bioeconomy for most of my career, and it was very frustrating why there wasn't more political action on doing something to replace fossil fuels. And so I started to look into the politics behind that. And that led to my first book, which was written 7 years ago now, where I looked at the international politics of climate change. More recently, I've been focused on looking at the politics of Americans and their reaction to the climate crisis. And that book called Climate Brawl, the politics of the climate crisis, I'm just finishing that up and hopefully I'll get it published sometime this year. On Twitter, I've been involved dealing with climate deniers for at least 5 or 6 years now. When I first got into it, I was quite frustrated about how climate deniers could say almost anything they wanted on Twitter, and they would have large followings. So I started challenging them. I certainly wasn't the first person to do that, and many others have done that as well. And as I did this for a few years, I used to show scientific papers, quote the IPCC, a lot like what other people were doing. The climate deniers didn't seem to care very much. And so I still persisted. And then one day, a few years ago, I was interacting with a very high profile climate denier. He had tens of thousands of followers, and I was just swamped by them. Every time I made a comment, a dozen of them or so would jump all over me. And I knew there were other people on Twitter that wanted to help, but I had no way of really contacting them. And so what I did is almost 2 years ago now, I introduced a hashtag, Climate Brawl. I had never introduced a hashtag before, and I had no idea what would happen. Well, it caught on. And what hashtag Climate Brawl is today, it's sort of like the bat signal to call people out to Twitter to help in the attacks of the propaganda that's tweeted by climate deniers. And I'm very proud to say that it has really caught on. There's at least hundreds of people, maybe thousands, that now support Climate Brawl. And it changed the Twitterverse as how we dealt with climate deniers. No longer is it one person against the hordes of the climate deniers. Now there's always many from the Friends of Climate Brawl that deal with Twitter on the propaganda of the climate deniers.
Thank you, sir, for introducing yourself and enlightening us with your journey. Sir, you have started a unique hashtag, Climate Brawl. So, could you please share the story behind it?
Yeah, I gave a lot of it in the last uh, spiel I just gave about the introduction. It was really to the majority of the people on the Twitterverse support the science. But you'd never get that impression when you look at how the tweets are. And that's because the climate deniers are very loud on Twitter and they're very aggressive. And so you see their tweets more often that's disproportionate to really the numbers that they represent. So Climate Brawl has really brought together a community that is willing to engage the aggressive tweeting of climate deniers. Essentially what they do is all they do is attack the science. They don't have backgrounds in the science, they don't have credibility, but they are very loud on Twitter. And so now there is a large group out there. Again, we call them the Friends of Climate Brawl. And we act together to try to show why the climate denier tweets are wrong. And it's no longer just showing them science that counters what they're tweeting about. It's to make them justify how they can make the claims that they're doing. Where is their peer-reviewed science that supports what they have to say? Where is the evidence that backs up their statements? And 99.9% of the time, they have none. Climate denial overall is a social club. And there's a small group, and what they do is they just repeat the same things over and over and over. No matter how many times they've been disproven, they don't care. They're there to argue. And by arguing, they're trying to get the impression that there is doubt on the science of climate change. And there is not. And so that one of the major purposes of the climate brawl is that when you have propaganda that's repeated again and again and again, it starts to be interpreted as the truth unless it's challenged. And so the Friends of Climate Brawl, we challenge that propaganda.
Sir, so you are really doing a great work by this hashtag Climate Brawl of challenging the propaganda of the climate deniers. Sir, so moving on to our today's topic, the man-made crisis. Sir, so what do you believe that climate crisis is man-made or organic?
The science is very clear. There is no doubt that the climate crisis, the climate change that the modern world is witnessing today is caused at least mainly by man-made forces, if not all of it. The studies in the peer-reviewed literature have shown this actually for decades. And during that period of time, the evidence gets stronger and stronger every single year. And so it is important to understand the science is clear, there is no doubt, there is no debate. The modern climate change is being driven by the actions of mankind.
Yeah, of course, like it is obvious enough that with the increasing demand of resources, the conditions of our climate is deteriorating. But the climate deniers would still be dubious about these issues. Sir, how does science play the role in justifying that climate change is a man made crisis, not a hoax call to action?
What science does is that it looks at all the possible uh, causes that could be causing climate change. It looks at the sun. It looks on any activities that's occurring on the earth. And it looks on the issues that we cause. And so what they show is that all the natural sources that are known to be what's called forcings on climate change, it would be impossible for them to have any major impact on what we're seeing today. It's an unprecedented period we're going through. And so what science is supposed to do and what has tried to do is simply act as a messenger that this is a serious issue. It's a threat to our future. and that it's being caused by us, and so that we can stop it if we so desire. Now, what happens is when science gives that message, the natural thing to do is expect the political world to run with it and institute the policies to stop this crisis before it gets worse. And that's what's been so frustrating about this case, is that even though the message from science is clear, politicians in many areas of the world, especially in the United States, have failed to react properly to the information that has been provided by the scientific community.
Yes, so of course, the science shows us the reality of what is happening, but still, like as you have stated, that many people are denying it, many politicians are denying it. So, like, would it be safe to say that the climate deniers are science skeptics too?
Science skeptics is not the proper term to describe what they're doing. Scientific skepticism is a fundamental of science. And that's what that means is that scientists are always looking for new information that should change the way we're thinking about a topic. But what you do is when you're being a scientific skeptic is you look at all the information to derive what the theory should be to describe something such as climate change. And that evidence is published in the peer-reviewed literature. And so a climate skeptic listens to all the information and comes up with a theory. A climate denier is not interested in all the information. They're only interested in information that they interpret as supporting their theory that the climate science is wrong. And so definitely climate deniers are just at best cherry picking the scientific information, or they're simply fabricating their own information to support their theories. And so in summary of that, a climate denier is not a scientific skeptic.
Yes, sir, you have truly said that these science skeptics accept the information, accept the facts, but the climate deniers do not really accept any facts, and like they create their own theories about the things happening.
That's it exactly. And that's the frustrating part. It's okay that for someone not to like a policy that could be put forward to combat climate change. But what is not right is simply to deny that the science exists. It's simply a lie. It's misleading. And so science is not trying to punish anyone. Science is talking about climate change because it's concerned about everyone's future. It is there to help so that we can take action before it becomes worse and before it becomes harder to take action. So it's just fundamentally wrong when people attack the science of climate change like climate deniers do.
Yeah, like science shows us the reality of what is happening. So of course we cannot like deny it. There would be no sense in denying these facts, this information, which is cautioning us for the future. So how do you see the future of the Paris Agreement? Would it be the second Kyoto Protocol? Why are the world leaders doing nothing and feeding us with their fake promises?
That is a difficult challenge, difficult question to directly answer because the past record has not been that great. I like what the Paris Agreement is trying to do. Certainly, more countries are taking it more seriously than they have in the past. If you look at where the political world is headed, it's definitely headed in the right direction. I have no doubts about that. The question that's hard to answer, though, is it moving fast enough? And as it is right now, the answer is no. So we certainly need, in the decade we are in now, we're in the new decade going forward. This is the decade that major action has to take place. There is no more discussing this any longer, no more talking about making excuses. The 2020s is when the globe has to be taking action against the burning of fossil fuels and stopping the climate crisis before. The one thing that people forget, the longer we wait, the harder it's going to be, the more dangerous it's going to be, the more expensive it's going to be. So it is to everyone's advantage, whether you're a climate denier or not, that we get going on the climate crisis and stopping it.
I absolutely agree with you, sir, that the world is changing, but not at the required pace. And in my opinion, the world leaders should take the responsibility to find the solutions for these issues instead of denying this fact. Sir, what policies should policymakers adopt to tackle climate change according to you?
There's no silver bullet for every country to resolve the climate crisis, but there's some fundamental aspects that have to be in place. Number one, there's no more discussing about the credibility of the science of the climate change. The science is reported in the IPCC reports. These are what the scientific community believes. This has to be taken for granted. This waste of simply babbling and complaining about the science is no good is so frustrating. There is no place for it in politics going forward. This has to stop immediately. As far as some of my favorite policies, the ones I like is that a price on carbon is critical to have. How you set that price in carbon is up to an individual government to set up. I like the one we have in Canada, which is essentially a fee and dividend carbon price. In other words, that yes, we pay a carbon tax, and the bulk of that we get returned, in our case, in our income tax. Another policy that I believe is fundamental to most areas is for carbon-free power production. This is relatively easy to do. It's been done in some areas already, and going forward, it's going to be essential. And related to that is having a mandate when all new cars have to be carbon emission free. It's possible right now. There is various jurisdictions that have set dates for this. When we're talking about an EV, or we're talking about some other way of fueling an automobile, it doesn't matter. But again, if you take care of the transportation sector and you take care of the power sector, it's not enough. This isn't the final thing you have to do, but these are fundamental things that we have to do. We have the ability to do it now, and we should be doing it now.
Yes, sir. You have truly said that policies on accepting the science facts, carbon price, carbon free productions, etc., should be made. And I think that we already have the solutions for tackling climate change. But the only thing that is left to do is converting these solutions into policies, as you have said, and implementing them on a large scale and at a faster pace. So tell us about how we can respond back to the climate deniers. Do they even deserve our attention?
With responding to climate deniers, the one thing that denialism comes out of, it comes out of fear. And for whatever reason, and right, wrong, or indifferent, these people generally fear what the science is saying. And I don't mean from the threat of climate change, but what the policies could do to them. A lot of these people may be associated with the fossil fuel industry, or ideology leads a lot of this, by the way. The right wing is very much against climate policies, especially in the United States. The one thing that policy should include, that should help, if I am a person that's going to be hurt by a climate policy, possibly losing my job or losing opportunities to earn income for my family, the government has to protect those workers. No worker should be left behind. And in other words, if a country passes a law that says, okay, we're going to ban fossil fuels by such and such a year, and that this industry is going to have to be shut down, the people in that industry shouldn't be threatened by that. As part of the policy to restrict that industry has to be full protection for the people that are working in this industry, because it's not their fault. They're collateral damage in this, and so they need to be protected. For anything else versus climate denials, the one thing that I ask them is, don't you care about the future of your family? Because climate change affects us all, and it's going to get worse in the future. And so they have to get out of this selfish interest and start thinking of the bigger picture and how it affects everyone, including them.
Yes, sir. So you have truly said that basically the climate denialism is the fear of science, the science facts. And you have told us like a way that how we can ask them that do they care about their children, their family, their future generations? Because if they are denying these facts, these science facts, then they are obviously putting their future generations on the brink of collapse. And Mr. Kutney, what message would you like to convey to the climate activists all around the world through this episode of Ring the Bell?
Well, first of all, in regard to the activities of Ms. Thunberg and the young activists such as yourself, and by the way, congratulations. I saw that she retweeted your tweet about your climate strike on Friday. And so those involved in the youth activity and the Fridays for Future climate strikes, they've been an inspiration to everybody. That's not a youth movement, that's a global movement. Old guys like me are inspired by that. And so please, please keep it up. But also, this isn't a youth problem. It's not generational. It doesn't matter if it's my generation or your generation or the ones in between. We are all affected by this. And so the important thing to do, what can us individuals do? And you and the climate strikers are already doing this, but one is to act. Do something. What you do is entirely up to you, but don't sit there and being passive expecting other people to act. Take care of what you control. Don't point fingers at other people about how they're not doing something. Worry about what you do. I control what I do. I don't control what you do, and I don't control what other people do. So make sure you're doing what you can do as much as possible. Related to that is engaging. Talk to people about climate change. Talk to climate deniers to try to convince them to move on. I mean, you can do it to your friends and relatives. You can do it with your people at school or work. And in my case, I do it on Twitter. I do it almost all day long on Twitter. The third most important thing that individuals can do is make sure you vote, because the hard policies going forward are going to be politically driven, and we vote those people into office in most cases. In the democracies of the world, we decide who gets to be in office. So if we vote in the wrong person, it's not the person's fault, it's our fault. So be careful when you vote, because this is an issue that we need strong political action as well.
Your words have really touched my heart and surely inspired our audience. That how climate change, we will all be affected by it, and we need to take actions, control what we do, and spread awareness about it. Thank you, sir, for giving us a beautiful insight on our today's topic.
The man-made crisis.
Thank you so much. It's been a real honor and I really enjoy it. And again, I am, just to repeat, I'm very inspired by how youth like yourselves have worked so hard on activism with the climate strike and making sure the world knows that this is important for everybody. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, sir. And I would now like to conclude on the note that though the climate crisis may be a blind spot for some, but we cannot let that become a blind spot for the youth and the coming generations. Thank you, and thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to this episode of Ring the Bell podcast. Hope it has been an amazing experience for you and would have found your takeaway from it. I feel nothing is perfect, but we should keep trying to make things perfect. So, if you feel I should add more sugar or salt to my podcast, do drop in your suggestions at outofstate888 at the rate gmail.com. Till then, hasta luego.